Live, where we discuss workplace violence and active shooter incidents. Today, we're going to be talking about using artificial intelligence to mitigate active shooter incidents. My guest, who I'm very happy to have on here today, is Sonny Tai. He's the CEO and co-founder of Actuate. His company builds threat detection systems using computer vision software and artificial intelligence that turns any security camera into a smart camera, which is honestly a game changer in this space. So, Sonny, welcome very much. I appreciate you coming on today.
Hey, thanks, Gene. You're made for radio, man. You sound like Joe Rogan almost. It's so smooth. Yeah. I've thought about doing something like this before, but I feel like I'll come on camera and just start stuttering and embarrass myself. So thanks for having me and giving me this opportunity to practice, so I can be like you, be like a radio star.
I don't know if you want to be like me, but no, it's all the microphone. It's not really me. No, I appreciate it. It's funny. We met, just to give a backstory about how we met years ago, I guess probably 2018. It was about the time I think you would.
I remember the story exactly.
Yeah.
So I came across the story because back then our company was at the idea stage. An idea stage company is literally you have an idea, maybe you built a prototype, but you don't really have customers yet. And Elizabeth McBride, who's a Forbes writer, wrote an article about you. And then I knew that she was writing about things in a physical security law enforcement space. So I reached out to her to see if she might be interested in writing an article about us. And she said, graciously accepted, and wrote a really, really nice article about me and Ben and a company that we're trying to build. And asked for introduction to you. And she was gracious enough to make the introduction. That's how we got connected. So yeah, I remember everything.
You know what's really funny is I thought she wanted to introduce. I didn't know you'd seen my article first, so that's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was funny because we both had sort of that mission to address a problem that's really only gotten worse over the years, which is active shooter incidents and mass shootings, and gun violence overall, which is actually what Elizabeth McBride was writing about. She was doing a whole series on gun violence. So yeah, I mean it's neat. We both really had that passion to try to make a difference. And if you want to tell your story about how you why you got into that.
Yeah, although I'm a little bit embarrassed when you say both of us have the passion, right? Here's like a 20-year SWAT team commander veteran, and here's a guy just trying to build a tech startup.
Yeah, a guy that was a Marine. Yeah, a captain, I believe. Yeah, no. Let's not even go there.
Yeah, I'll tell a little bit about my story. So I'm an immigrant. I was born in Taiwan and I grew up in South Africa. The only reason why it's relevant is because South Africa has one of the highest rates of violent crime and gun violence in the world. In terms of gun homicides per capita, South Africa is 2 times the city of Chicago in terms of gun homicides per capita. So that's the environment that we grew up in. I don't want to say that we lived in fear constantly, but something that people always had a pucker factor about, especially late at night. You don't want to venture out. Home intrusions. I know Americans are often like, hey, I need to have my firearms at home, protect my home. Yeah, but honestly, like the threat of a home intrusion in the U.S. is pretty minimal. But in South Africa, it's a very salient threat. A close family friend of ours was shot and killed in his own home in a home intrusion. He was also Taiwanese South African, published a Chinese language newspaper for the local immigrant community there, and my childhood playmate's father. That was actually after we left South Africa, but that just goes to show a big reason why we left is because of violent crime and gun violence there. And my mom wanted to bring me and my sister. So my father passed when I was little, that's why he wasn't in the picture, but bring me and my sister to a safer place to live. And it's always been a dream of hers to come to the United States. She took a job that paid $12 an hour on H-1B visa sponsorship, and we came to the U.S. Eventually, my mom got remarried and were lucky enough to be able to become green card holders of the U.S. and enable me to join the Marine Corps. So 3 years after 9/11, I graduated from high school, enlisted in the Marine Corps, joined the reserve so I can go to college. Took a gap year, went through the whole boot camp MOS school pipeline, and served in the reserves until 2009. So I became a U.S. citizen in 2008, commissioned as a Marine Corps officer, went on active duty from 2009 to 2013. Went to Afghanistan in 2012, although I didn't see combat, so not as hard as Eugene. But yeah, then I decided that didn't want to try and do something else. I've always wanted to build a tech company. Even when I grew up in South Africa, my mom brought a brand new computer home back from Taiwan. I used to take it apart, get the blue screen of death, try to teach myself coding. I've always wanted to start my own tech company. We've never had a good idea. But after a Las Vegas shooting, I started looking into, and this is just now like a few months before we met, or at least connected. I started looking into like how can we use technology to save lives during these crisis situations. I know we're not going to solve gun violence with technology. I think that takes a whole of society approach,
Yeah.
including not to get political, but like regulation and legislation can play a role. Funding for mental health can play a role. Technology can play a role. More policing can play a role, right? It's not a partisan thing, but like it's going to take all Americans to come together to actually solve gun violence. But technology can play a small role, and technology can play a role where we can get help to the right place at the right time. We can help building occupants evacuate faster, make the right decisions under duress. So I started doing some research. And the first thing that they teach you as a startup founder, if you ever taken or been through a startup accelerator or taken a course on entrepreneurship, they say, do customer discovery. And what customer discovery is that before you even go out and build a product, figure out what your customers want, figure out what resonates with them and what's going to create value for them. So for me, like if I want to address this problem, the first thing I go to is I go talk to law enforcement leaders. I talk to superintendents and principals who are thinking about active shooter threats all the time. So I did 20 something such interviews, including talking to you, but also talked to, at the time, he was the deputy chief of Memphis Police Department. So it was gracious that he gave me time of day, right? One of the most violent cities in America and one of the most senior officers that have to deal with this threat day in and day out. And a piece of common feedback I got when I started bringing up technology was they said, it'd be really cool if existing security cameras that are installed here could automatically identify threats. And I started doing some research on whether that was possible. And I found that computer vision technology had matured to the point where sometimes it can outperform human beings. I also found that there wasn't really a company that built a credible product that would address this threat. So, I'm like, I always wonder if I'm decisive or impulsive. I can't don't know what the fine line is. And the funny thing is about a year ago, I went and just impulsively decided to adopt a kitten. So now I'm a cat owner now. And here's a 36-year-old Marine who has a cat. But that's one example of being impulsive, but also kind of, I guess, impulsively started this company. I was like, hey, look, I'm going to build this. Like I stopped coding when I was 14 years old. I wanted to focus on other things. How the hell am I going to build this company? Like I have no coding experience, let alone AI experience. But in the Marine Corps teach you adapt, improvise, and overcome. So I figured I'd find a way. So I moved back to Chicago. At the time, I was close to my parents in Texas because I graduated from University of Illinois and the University of Chicago. And I figured that I could use the university's resources to help support what I wanted to build. And I was very lucky that I came across my current co-founder, Ben, who spent 5 years at Microsoft as an AI program manager, has a really strong data science background, and data science is the foundation of building AI. And my idea really resonated with him. He started dropping hints. He was like, hey, let me know if I can help out. It's like, forget helping out, man. You can do all things I can't do. Let's just do this together, 50-50. Let's go. It's how impulsive I am. But it turned out being the right decision. So that was early 2018. And that's when about the time Elizabeth McBride wrote the article about us, about the time I was connecting with you. And at the time, we were looking for initial customers, like very early customers who were just willing to test our product for free. So by the end of the year, we raised $285,000, mostly from angel investors. Some of my classmates from business school wrote me a small checks. A buddy of mine from Marine Corps was very gracious and wrote me a $25,000 check. And that enabled us to hire a couple engineers and not have me pay them out of my PayPal account because I was dying. Like I was so broke. My mom sent me $10,000. My best friend sent me $10,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And after that, we raised a seed round of $2 million. Then we kept growing. And last year, we raised an $8 million Series A. For those in the audience who don't know what seed and Series A is, seed is usually when startups maybe have a few testing customers, but investors feel like the market's really big and they believe in the founders. So they give you some money to be able to kind of grow your business. And Series A is typically when you have a critical mass of paying customers, usually like $1 million in revenue, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more. and investors want to give you money so you can add fuel to a fire and continue to grow. So that's where we are today. We're deployed about 20,000 cameras nationwide, and yeah, just really trying to take this company to the next level and get this installed, get the solution installed in as many organizations as we can. So, sorry
Yeah.
for being
So,
long-winded.
no. That's exactly it. And I think I'm going to go a little bit deeper on exactly what your system does. But I want to make this point is that one thing that I really I think that resonated when we first met was the concept was really different to me. You know, there's gunshot detection systems that are out there, and I'm not knocking them, but I found them, you know, it's a little too late. You know, you've already got someone shooting. You've already, you know, it's great that you're getting that little bit of a warning, but you already are shots are already fired, and at that point, you're behind the eight ball. And you know from your training in the Marine Corps, you know these kind of incidents are a battle of seconds, milliseconds, even. I mean, every single second or just fraction of second you can save makes a huge difference in the outcome in the end. And so the gun detection systems, essentially, if someone fires a gun, there's sensors that are put throughout a school or whatever business, you know, building or location, and it will alert their security of where that sound came from. And it uses the sound and the flash and the muzzle. There's a lot of different, they're a lot more sensitive than they used to be. Uh, but that's how you would tell. What your system does is it uses artificial intelligence and make sure, and tell me if I misspeak on your part, but it will, as soon as a weapon is displayed, it will alert them. So before that even happens, so if you think about an active shooter incident, usually there's some kind of setup. They'll go into a stairwell, a small office, they'll take a gun out, and at that point, if it's seen on the camera, it's there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, you know, the gunshot systems are very expensive. You're putting all new sensors in, but your system actually utilizes the system that's already there. So when it comes to a cost savings, it's amazing how much the cost difference is between your system and theirs, and you're getting the advantage of being earlier notified of a weapon being involved. Did I explain it correctly? I want to make sure I got that right.
I think that was a very competent explanation. The one area I might push back on just slightly is, and this is, just out of the spirit of being transparent and ensuring the audience has the full perspective. When people say that, hey, your gun detection solution can prevent an incident from
Yeah.
happening, I honestly think that's very unlikely. And the reason is because, I mean, Gene, you've studied way more of
Yeah,
these
you're
than I
right.
have.
Yeah.
But like when I looked at the Parkland shooting, Nicholas Cruz was in there stairwell. He was staging, but
Yep.
15 seconds after he drew his rifle from his bag, first round was downrange already.
Yep.
15 seconds, we love to have those 15 seconds, but it's also
Yep.
not a lot of time, right?
Yep.
But I think where the computer vision gun detection system adds more value over gunshot detection beyond the things that you mentioned is that visual verified intelligence. So the dispatch center knows who the shooter is, what he looks like, what direction he's heading, what weapon he's armed with, whether there's more than one shooter, all the critical pieces of intelligence that can help save lives, because someone like you leading a SWAT team or even an officer, school resource officer on the ground can make those immediate decisions to neutralize a threat as fast as possible, and also provide that information to building occupants so they can make the best possible decisions on their defensive evacuation measures. I do think that there's the one criticism. Again, I'm not a subject matter expert here, so if I say something stupid, definitely call me out. But I think one piece of criticism about things like Alice and Run, Hide, Fight, it's like a one size fits all, right? Like if you have a huge campus and a shooter's on one side of the building, you might want to evacuate on the other side. But the problem is that it's really hard to coordinate this, especially in the heat of the moment when rounds are going down range. But if you have that intelligence at hand to be able to make these decisions and have that data to make data-driven decisions to increase the probability of survival for the building occupants, I think that makes a lot of sense. And one thing that I always try to think about, the second order effects, right? Like one thing you learn in Marine Corps, anywhere in the military, is that there's golden hour, right? Like if somebody gets shot, a lot of them don't die immediately. They bleed out.
Yes.
And you and I both know that paramedics will not go in when an active shooter has not been neutralized yet.
Yeah.
So faster that you can get officers or armed response to neutralize the active shooter, the more lives you're going to save, even if you're not, even if you don't stop more people from getting shot, because you're rendering aid to those who are wounded and getting them to the ICU during the golden hour, which is absolutely critical. So I think those are the ways that our solution can potentially be helpful.
Yeah, and if I said it would prevent, I think that was definitely a bad
No,
choice
not
of
you,
words.
but like some
Okay.
people have seen that
Yeah, no,
before.
it's really about mitigating. The earlier notify of an event about to happen, the better. It makes things easier. You're going to save lives. There's no doubt about it. You're going to save lives. You're not going to be able to save everyone. Unfortunately, these incidents happen very quickly, which is why time is so important. If you think of, they're having the security cameras where I see it as something that can actually prevent a situation would be something along the lines of when you look at Inland Regional, which was the San Bernardino shooting, where they came from outside with their guns presented. If the early warning was in time, if they had that, they probably could have locked down that facility a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
faster.
yeah.
So there are benefits that way. But yeah, I mean it really to me was a game changer and a concept because you hit on something that's been a pet peeve of mine, and it's something that kind of goes against my industry, which I will flat out say is that active shooter training is a waste of time. And I say that all the time to people, and they look at me like, "But don't you teach that?" And I go, "I do, but it's a waste of time because you have to look at the bigger picture. It's a component of a response. It's not an individual. You can't just have training only. And if training was the solution, we wouldn't have these incidents. But it's the combination, it's the overlapping of security, which would be, your camera systems, it would be the locks, it would be
Yeah.
utilizing the design of features that you have that could help, prevent or deter people from starting out in one location to another. And it's training combined with all of that that really plays a key into it. And I think that we're missing that a lot these days. But especially when we're looking at, and I think there's a change now starting to happen with that. I think there's more people starting to align with how I feel. But I have to say that the security element of being able to have real-time data is critical. If you look at what happened in Parkland,
Yeah.
it's down the street from my house. This is my neighborhood. This is where, this is my area. There was a delayed system. Their cameras were delayed,
Mhm.
and so there was no real time, and that's something. How do you guys examine those camera systems to make sure they meet the real time setup? And I'm not a camera expert at all
I'm
in
not
that, but
either. Yeah, yeah.
but is that something that you guys deal with?
So typically, what we do when we work with a customer that's interested in our solution is we never ask somebody to buy something they haven't seen work, right?
Mhm.
Um, so we will connect to their camera systems, and we will do a walkthrough. And they're in a state where we don't have representatives,
Yeah.
where we can't easily get to, then they can have a school resource officer or staff do a walkthrough. And sometimes it's with real weapons, like school resource officer might draw their sidearm on, let's say, a Saturday morning when students aren't going to be around.
Mhm.
Walk by the cameras and they'll see themselves getting alerts on their phone. I've seen it come out as fast as 1 second. If my colleague Ellie was in, we can actually do a gun demo where he basically just like pulls out this rifle. He walks outside and he would ask you for your phone number. And as soon as the weapon's presented, you hear bing and you'll get the text message, right? But it's seen as fast as 1 second, but usually within a few seconds, you'll get the alert. The way that most customers choose to use our solution is that there are hundreds of central stations out there. And these are alarm monitoring companies that traditionally monitor burglar alarms, but they're increasingly monitoring video alarms as well.
Yep.
So we would send a gun detection alerts to them. And usually, if they get a gun detection alert, we do occasionally get false positives. I'm not going to sit here and claim that the solution is perfect. If a teacher is holding a staple gun, it's black that could look like a pistol from certain angles. That sometimes triggers. It's pretty rare, but it does happen.
Mhm.
But there's also active shooter drills that happen all the time at schools, and they'll get these alerts and they'll go through their protocols. It's good practice for them as well. But the idea of having this is that you'll have our AI solution that identifies whenever a firearm is presented in front of one of the cameras. It sends to an offsite third-party monitoring center that does the remote monitoring, a professionally trained dispatcher will then dispatch law enforcement and also provide the building occupants, whoever is on a call list, of real-time information of exactly what is going on. So that's typically how we work. But to answer your question, testing the cameras, yeah, we do so by doing the walkthrough so that the customer has trust and confidence that the system is working as advertised.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people that we talk to, they run into the fact that they don't even know what systems they have and what works, and so doing that dry run is definitely critical. I think again, that's another component is people don't maintain their equipment. They buy the shiniest, newest thing that's out there, and they think that it's going to solve their problems, and then they usually neglect other areas of their
I
security.
wish they bought the shiniest, newest thing. Usually they buy the
Oh yeah,
$150
yeah.
night vision Chinese cameras,
Oh yeah.
which look for what they're used for. I'm sure it's okay, but a lot of times there's reliability issues. You get what you pay for.
Absolutely. Well, it's you look at the whole procurement. When you're dealing with, especially with schools where there's government stuff,
Yeah.
it's always the low bid that gets through there. Which again, I will commend you because you when you're looking at spending $1 million for gunshot detection systems or a reduced cost for your system. Anything saves people. Any cost savings that you can pass on that also bolsters their security is really critical. So again, it for me when we first spoke, I was like, this is a game changer in the industry, and this is something I'm happy to see that you're having such success with it because it needs that fresh eye. You're saying you didn't have a lot of experience with coding and all that, and you're impulsive and that's great, but that's what you need. You need to be a visionary. You need to look for solutions that people aren't really talking about to get through and to make those differences. And yeah, it's great. It's very interesting to see that how important video is. Like just think about it on a business model, just like how like I'm doing these we're doing video now. How important video is in our society. That cameras are everywhere. You can't get away from them, and you're just capitalizing on that, which I think is just tremendous. It's got
Yeah.
so much purpose to it.
We try to capitalize on it, but we're also trying to walk a fine line because
Yeah,
we also don't want to live in a society where every move is monitored, right? We don't want to live in a totalitarian 1984 type world. I mean, I read an article once where an Australian tourist jaywalked in China and got the funds automatically deducted from his WeChat account because the cameras facially recognized him and matched it to his WeChat account, which is pretty insane. Like we never want to live in a world like that. So that's why, as a company, I can't speak for other companies. I'm hoping they're doing the same thing. But we always talk about building ethical AI, building ethical computer vision. We made a conscious decision. We talk about, we get asked this all the time. Do you build facial recognition? Hey, we love to do facial recognition. I firmly believe that if facial recognition is done, it needs to be opt-in and not opt-out. Opt-in as in like, I choose to enable facial recognition on my iPhone so I can unlock my phone, but that's my choice. It's
yeah,
not done against my will by some camera over there, right?
yep.
So all we do is identify the shape and contour of a human being holding a firearm.
Mhm.
And if you have a firearm out and you're not at a shooting range, or in rare cases, if you're in a state that's open carry, maybe that's a different story.
Sure.
But generally, if you have a firearm out, it's either self-defense or a crime, right? Like, what other
Yeah.
reason would you have an unholstered weapon or open weapon? And you probably want to have a dispatcher take a look at it to see whether or not we want to get help to the right place at the right time. And that's our philosophy with gun detection.
And I don't know the answer to this. I don't know if you guys are you just focusing on firearms, pistols and rifles, or are you also looking at other weapons that could be used like knives and all that kind of stuff, or is that is that the
We,
next iteration of where you might be going to?
we try knives, and I always want to, like, as a company, um, yeah, I learned this in the Marine Corps, right? Like, integrity is paramount. We also found that integrity is good business.
Yeah,
And we're very transparent about our capabilities and limitations. And we try doing development on knives. And to be honest with you, pulling a knife out 10 meters away from a camera, you can barely see it. So
yeah,
yeah, people are like, you know, if there's like mass machete killings, we can detect machetes, but you're
yeah,
telling a little switchblade, it's almost
yeah.
impossible to see. So we have not built a robust knife detection system. But we
Yeah.
have built some other capabilities that are relevant from a security perspective. Obviously, to save lives, if we're talking about K through 12 schools, healthcare, I think they care a lot about active shooter threats. But we
Yes.
identify intruders, loiterers, crowds, anything like that, how like human beings are present in a camera frame and how they're interacting.
Mhm.
We identify, but we also don't identify features of human beings. So one big topic that you'll read a lot about if you're talking about video surveillance, computer vision, video analytics, so on and so forth, is bias in AI. Like, are we picking up black people more frequently than white people,
Yeah.
right? Just be fully like blunt and transparent. Are we doing
Sure.
that? Well, we don't, because we only identify the human being, and a human being if he or she is holding a weapon, and not the identifying features of the human being. So going back to the privacy aspect of things, we felt that as a company that was really important.
No, I think that's great because it is a concern. I just saw a video the other day that I guess iPhones will take pictures like on its own to make sure you're still there or something. I don't know how true it was, but I was like, I just thought about the possibility of really that's not something that would be hard to think they couldn't do. The technology is just immense. So the fact that you're taking that kind of integrity approach is important. I would think, especially when you're dealing with schools where you've got children, you're dealing with
Yeah,
hospitals
yeah,
where you have patients. There's a lot of privacy concerns. So I
yeah,
think that's really kind of critical to deal with that. And it's something that something else. So you will because there's a lot of motion sensing equipment out there these days. But I would imagine and I think you kind of hit on a little bit that you're able to detect someone. Let's say there's a hospital or any kind of facility where there's the public access and then you have the employee access or the
yeah.
restricted areas. So you could actually set those up too in those areas if they detect a person
Yes.
walking, you would be able to alert somebody that there's somebody back there or approaching the
Yeah,
area.
yeah. I mean, go back to customer discovery, right? Like if you talk to anyone with a Nest camera or Ring camera at home and say, "Hey, I turn this off because I get motion sensing like alerts anytime the freaking wind blows. It's useless."
Yes.
And a big part of our business, actually, the majority of our business now, is helping institutions, usually institutions, not residential, identify when there's a human body. Because if it's, let's say you're a K through 12 school, and at 2 a.m. there's somebody on a football field, unarmed, but somebody on
Mhm.
a football field, you probably want to know. It could be some senior prank or whatever the case may be. Not a threat to life, but certainly a possible threat to property.
Yeah.
And having guards everywhere could be profoundly expensive. We
Yeah.
work with a major school district that basically transitioned to a hybrid model of using guards and our video AI through a monitoring center instead of guards alone. And the
Yes.
Department of Education ended up saving like $26 million per year because it was over 850 schools, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in a business of making human beings more efficient by giving them the ability to make data-driven decisions to get physical security help to the right place at the right time. So
And that's the whole purpose of a well-established security plan is that redundancy, having the cameras, then the security to
mhm.
verify what they're seeing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and we miss that. And that's again going back to my whole thing about how active shooter training isn't worth it. It's because there's nothing after that. They're not focusing on, you know, do we have areas that aren't really fortified that need to be fortified where someone could have easy access, or are the employees bypassing the systems by propping doors open or keeping them unlocked because it's inconvenient for them? And then that is a training issue. That's they don't
yeah,
understand the purpose of the security. So it's all these redundancies that need to be in place, and when you have that, I mean, it just makes things so much better, but people don't realize that, and getting that message out that security is about redundancy. It
yeah.
really is about it. And having, like you said, the savings of that, like you just said, what do we say, $26 million that they saved by using both security. That's huge. And especially, look at our economy right now. Everyone's struggling. Government systems are struggling. The schools, everyone, budget's always an issue.
Well,
Um,
not for your state. Apparently, you got $26 billion budget
well,
surplus or something.
it's Florida, so the Sunshine State. It's been miserably hot out. Um, but you know what I'm saying. But overall, everyone's always looking to save money, and I think that for many years, that's why security's been sort of like the unwanted stepchild kind of thing, where no one wanted to
Yeah,
deal with it because it's just too expensive and it's too much problem, and we'll deal with the problem when it happens. Unfortunately, when these problems happen, although there's a low, you mentioned it, the United States is very safe. It really is. When you look at the big picture of things, we are very safe. And people laugh at me like, look at the news. I'm like, yeah, look at other countries. Look at what goes on outside of us. There's so much more gun violence outside of the United States that people don't realize. We're relatively safe. But just because statistically you have a low chance of happening where you're at doesn't mean that the impact of it isn't monumental.
yeah, yeah,
So, you have to weigh that, and as a CEO of a company or a director of a school, any of these positions, you have to take into fact that, yeah,
Mhm.
it's not something that may happen, but if it does, it can destroy you. And that's just financially. Forget about financial. Think about the employees or the people. If it's school, think about the kids. Think about the
yeah,
impact
yeah.
of loss of
The
lives,
trauma is
the
life. Yeah,
community. I mean, it destroys. Like I said, I've seen what's happening here in Parkland. It's still fresh here. I mean, that was years ago, and it's still fresh. The trial's going on now. I mean, for the sentencing, it is still a very emotional thing that is deeply rooted and will probably always be rooted in Broward County and
yeah,
really throughout the world. But definitely here, and you have to think of the bigger picture. Again, that's been the comment I always make. Think of the big picture. It's not just one component; it's everything. And think of how it really impacts the society and in your area. It's amazing. It really is. It's devastating. So it's something you got to take seriously.
yeah. And
And
to your point, you know, I think America is a safe country,
yeah,
but we are less safe than other developed countries, generally
yeah,
speaking. And just looking at the numbers, and the thing with security is that it's it's frustrating, but also understandable because security is like paying insurance premiums. Like, who the hell loves paying insurance premiums, right?
exactly.
Every day, every month when the payment's deducted from your bank account for your like car insurance, you're like, what the hell? Why am I paying this? Until the day you get into a car crash, you're like, okay, thank goodness I had this. When I came back from Afghanistan, I froze my USA car insurance, and I was on Interstate 5 in San Diego, and somebody like jammed into my side and sped off for whatever reason. I don't know why. Maybe he was drunk. I don't think he had anything against me. It was a stranger.
Yeah,
I was on a hook for a $3,000 repair because I didn't get my insurance reinstated. Um, but I mean, to that point, like physical security is often treated the same way for the same reason.
yeah,
They see it as a cost center, doesn't generate revenues. It's an eyesore, right? I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, especially when it comes to like the aesthetics and the feel of the building. And now we're all about, when it comes to commercial real estate, we're about the employee experience, the customer experience. And when they walk in, they don't want to feel like they're walking to freaking Fort Knox. And that's kind
yeah,
of understandable,
yeah,
right? But then what's the trade off? Like, how can we make security low cost and inconspicuous and also effective, right? It's almost like
yeah.
the triangle. You got pick 2 out of 3. So that's something that I think those of us in the industry are constantly trying to struggle against. But I do think that there has been a significant change in attitude in our society that we need to take more proactive measures towards security. And perhaps one way that we do it is through innovation. I don't think technology is the only solution, but it's one of the solutions that can help make security more effective while still fulfilling some of the other business and organizational objectives that people have laid out.
Yeah, we talking about aesthetics, one component of our services is we do CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. And if you're probably familiar with it. And when it first was introduced and created in 1970, it was very much about target hardening, and just it was very fortressy, and
Yeah,
it caused a lot of problems. And over the years, it's evolved into an incredible system where you're able to have security design elements in place that are people don't even realize that they're there. And that's the trade-off. Now, of course, you also want to have security that's obvious.
yeah, yeah,
Camera
yeah.
you want cameras there. You want them to be there because, okay, I'm being, it's that concept of, people doing the wrong thing don't want to be caught. And if they think they're
Yeah.
going to be seen, they're going to avoid it.
Yeah.
So that's what, the cameras are great, but you're right. It's definitely that feeling of being in a fortress that is an issue. And there's been studies for schools about target hardening, and that, especially when you're talking about metal detectors and things like that. It actually has been shown to decrease the learning on the students. They get so anxious and scared, all in their constant state of fear. They're not able to study, not able to learn the way they should, and it causes a lot of problems. So finding that balance is really, really important. And I agree. I think things are starting to change. I think people are starting to look at as security as more than just putting up a wall and locks and that. And they're starting to see there's other avenues and other ways to do it to where it's effective, yet it's not going to take away from the aesthetics and the enjoyment of an area, whether a school, a hospital, a building, anything like that.
Have you
So
been to LaGuardia or JFK recently? Or
no,
no?
I have not.
No, I mean, if you ever go, like the NYPDs, they're deploying to Afghanistan. Flak, Kevlar, like rifle, like full kit. And to your point, it's for that visual deterrence, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like nobody's gonna do something stupid if the NYPDs they're in full kit and they're ready to throw down and they're got their body armor and helmet on.
yep,
So
yeah,
there's definitely a time and place for that. And the one place
yeah,
you want to feel safe is I don't think anyone wants to see another terror incident happen in a U.S. airport or from air travel. I think the
yeah.
last time it happened was somebody shooting up a baggage claim in Florida, right?
Yeah, I was there. I was
Oh,
on
you were
that one.
there? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh!
yeah, I was I was on that. Yeah, that was
Wow.
crazy. That was crazy. Lot of issues. The tactical teams did great. There were a lot of learning lessons. I'll say that
Mhm.
everyone was doing the best they could, but
Yeah,
in it's something that people don't really understand unless you've been involved in it is that um, it's trying to control chaos, and you can't. And the things that you think that you prepared for, usually there's things you didn't think of, and that was definitely the case in at the airport. Just things that they thought they were ready for, and they weren't, and it was a valuable lesson. And unfortunately, it takes these incidents to learn the next thing on how to do it. You were talking earlier about how people die because they're bleeding out, not so much for the injury. The response from law enforcement is different, and even with paramedics, they will now go into areas that we call a warm zone. So they'll be tagged up with a team of officers. They'll go into an area that's relatively secure,
yeah.
with an officer guarding them. So there's
Well, that's good.
as
Yeah,
it goes through it's but there's a lot of politics behind that as well, which I could talk for another 4 hours on that whole thing. But it's getting better. Unfortunately, there's still I think Broward, because of what happened here, we're very well prepared. Law enforcement is really on point,
yeah.
with how to handle things. Some other agencies are still behind a little bit, but I think it's getting better overall. But yeah, no, it's just the world we're living in, and finding these solutions is what's important.
I mean, one thing that can be done as well is, look, maybe I'm just borrowing from my previous experiences. Like if you have a company or a platoon of Marines or soldiers, you have corpsmen and medics embedded with them, right? I mean,
Yep.
every at least every SWAT team, I don't know about conventional
Yep.
officers, should have your medic or corpsman equivalent, and everyone should be trained in combat life saving, so you can address these types of traumatic wounds that could happen in an active shooter incident. So I don't know if the police departments in general across the board are doing that yet, but it seems like a good idea.
Yeah, so, and again, I can speak very strongly for Broward County. Every agency, all the officers carry tourniquets. They will
Yeah,
have some kind of quick clot or some bleeding stop kit that they'll have with them, so that they're able to treat as they go. And I know several people who are still in law enforcement who, not in a major scene, but car accidents, things like that, where they've used the
yeah,
equipment
yeah,
to save lives. I mean, it really is. It's a shame to see someone dying for something that's not a deadly injury,
yeah,
because they bled out. And that's something that we preach to everyone. Was like, well, civilians will say, what can we do? What can we do? And I'm like, learn first aid, learn
yeah,
like
yeah,
combat medic stuff. We teach Stop the Bleed, which is an incredible program, that helps with bleeding injuries and stuff like that. And learning that. I mean, imagine if you're in an active shooter situation, you're barricaded and then someone has been shot. You could actually stop the bleeding, keep them alive, so until rescue comes to take them.
That's a
It's
great
really
point.
important. It's really
Yeah,
important.
that's a great point. Speaking of active shooter training in schools, maybe that should be a part of it. You can make it voluntary because I'm guessing like some teachers don't want any part of that, but at least there'll be a volunteer core of faculty members who'll be willing to receive that combat life-saving training. And if stuff were to go down, at least you'll have people who are basic level trained that can render that tier, like first level of
Yep.
life-saving aid to extend life until the paramedics come and until help comes. So I think that could be huge value add as well.
And that's what we tell everyone. Listen, we understand that you may be afraid to fight, you may be afraid to do a lot of things, but saving someone's life, there's probably nothing worse than not being able to help somebody and just watch them die in front of you.
Yeah.
That's just got to be an absolutely horrible feeling to have. You're just helping someone. And I think we need to start as a society, we'll go over their conversation, but I think we need to start looking out for each other a little bit more, having more compassion and getting involved, especially when it comes to something like that. Everyone can play such a huge difference in just that aspect alone. And again, Broward County, even my office, in my office building, we have stop the bleed kits on every floor.
Yeah.
They're just by the elevator. So if someone, where to get it. I don't know who's trained here. There's a lot of businesses inside this pretty big building. But it's nice to know that it's there. It's a nice thing. And you see it a lot down here. So I'm happy to see that that's starting to go out. And I think the Stop the Bleed program is one of the driving factors behind it. They do a lot of marketing on it. So it's pretty important.
Yeah. And I think we as a society as well, one thing I feel like I see a little bit too much is that whenever these incidents happen, and maybe justifiably say, oh, why does it like only in America, right? But what I would encourage them to do is that, look, yeah, we have an issue with gun violence in the United States, but we live in the United States. This is our country. Yeah. And complaining about it on social media, like it might be some catharsis, like you feel pretty good that you're venting. But besides that, though, the more concrete action is to do something about it.
Yeah.
And whatever that is, learning life-saving skills. So if something happens near you, you can help.
Yep.
Or whatever you want to do, just take action, right? Take action. Like this is our nation that we love. And together we can each play a small part into making it better. And it just, like complaining alone doesn't really help that much.
No, it doesn't do anything. It really is a waste of time. And I think that, we're in a point in our society where it's sort of like, the popular thing to do is to complain. And complaining was something I always hated. If any of my guys ever came to me with a problem, I'm like, if you're going to complain to me without some kind of solution on how to fix it, don't even bother wasting my time. I'd rather let's start thinking about how we can make a difference, help each other out. And I think that's, especially when you're talking about, this topic, I think that's really critical. So, yeah. But anyways, it looks like we're almost out of time. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered on your company's it's growing. You guys are national, big. You're the big boy on the block these days.
Well, we have 21 employees, right? So it's not nowhere near big, but at least we're not unknown anymore. I think we have some credibility now. I think a solution works pretty well. And just hoping to get this in the hands of as many organizations as possible if it makes sense for them. So.
Yeah. Very good. And I've got your website on here. Is there any other contact information you want to tell everyone about, or is it just go to the website and reach out to you if they've got questions?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to reach out to me directly, it's Sonny@Actuate.ai. So it's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
So
very good. And anyone that's looking for any kind of security solutions, we are national now too. So you can reach me on LinkedIn, or survivalresponsellc.com is our website. Thank you very much, Sonny. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. I'm glad that we connected years ago and we've kept in touch. And I wish you all the luck and appreciate everything you're doing.
Appreciate you. Awesome.
Right. Thanks.